Mark Verheer here. It's a heat wave. I have that little fan running, drinking lots of water, and with our current electric bills, our heat waves, it's actually quite prudent to see how much power you consume, you know, playing your games, running all sorts of emulators or doing video editing. And I've been using a ton of low powered systems like the Intel NUC clone, a little Ryzen system, and also a Mac M1 Mini. I've had it for about a year plus, I think a bit longer, and I've been using it on and off in the game room. It's actually very particular when it comes to hooking it up to the television because it doesn't like any HDMI hub, even if it's ultra low latency for 8K, 120 frames per second capable hub. It just doesn't want to display properly. It gets out, or you get little dots, especially visible when you're running a black screen. If you hook it up with a high-end cable directly to the TV, it's fine. You don't want to capture any video from it because for some reason it really doesn't play nice with any of my capture devices. So I have to resort to using OBS. Well, OBS and Mac, they really don't get along. I mean, you can't record your audio on the Mac within OBS. You have to have all sorts of workarounds, and audio, Macs, and capturing audio on the Mac probably stems from the iTunes and, protective audio capture things that people, wouldn't be able to create their own tunes from capturing the computer's audio or whatever. But yeah, I'm very keen on showing off some of the emulation and gaming capabilities of the M1 Mac. And I did do another video. I'll probably link it down over here. There's a little eye, or you can actually see a little title thing appear, because very early on I actually demonstrated some of the gaming capabilities of the M1 Mac, and it seems that it all started out quite nice, and gamepads were supported and stuff. But then with macOS updates and also Parallels updates, the virtualization updates, somehow using a controller to control games, to play games, is actually very daunting on macOS, at least for me. But now I'm capable of using this wired or Bluetooth from within an emulated Windows 11 environment as well as macOS. And I'll show you some of the emulated Windows games, capturing that with OBS, as well as running some native emulators, ARM-based code, but also Intel-based code. Because Apple decided to hop on the ARM bandwagon, abandoning the Intel bandwagon. So basically we have all that stuff, like PowerPC to Intel. We had these dual binary things, and you have Rosetta. Well, it's there again. We jumped from Intel to ARM, and now we have Rosetta 2. And on the Microsoft side of things, Windows 11 ARM actually has a Microsoft equivalent of Rosetta, being able to execute Intel code. And am I impressed? Really, both really perform very well. And they won't do like the enhanced AVX2 instruction set, but most of the regular multi-core CPU instruction, it's support. I mean, a lot of software just runs beautifully. Let's go check it out. Okay, so here we are, OBS, and I'm capturing it with the Yeti microphone, the Blue Yeti microphone, and let me see if I can. Yeah, I've hooked up my Bluetooth USB speaker. But yeah, this is an iMac M1 Apple Silicon, and I'm running Parallels Desktop, and I'm just gonna run it, and I hope it will allow me to capture this properly. And if all is well, it is capturing a 1080p display thingy. I'm using the Windows Pro Insider Preview on Parallels 18. And what actually is quite cool is the fact that I'm able to run Steam and run x86 Intel applications on ARM. And games actually run pretty well. So let's see. For example, I would run Coast to Coast, and video settings, let's, oh, it has a weird settings. Okay, let's do that. And basically just run it. And I'm very curious whether or not OBS actually is capable of capturing this. Would be cool to be able to show you what the Mac M1 is capable of gaming wise. Now I've also installed a user driver that allows me to output and control the volume on the HDMI. Mode. But capturing the Mac sound basically is not really possible. For some reason, OBS and Mac, they just don't want to cooperate properly. I see a red dot on the screen, on the top right side of the screen, indicating that there may be some sort of recording going on. Steam actually recognizes my, or Parallels actually recognizes my DualShock 4 PlayStation 4 controller as a Microsoft Xbox 360 controller, which makes it actually very compatible with all sorts of Windows games and Steam. And so this is running at 900p, and it's actually running butter smooth. And I'm actually recording this on OBS, and the virtual system, it has 4 cores to its it has 4 cores and 4 gigabytes of RAM, and which is for Windows 10 or 11, you might think it's actually very little, but this is Windows ARM, and it's actually capable of using a lot less RAM for some reason. What I'm actually quite amazed by is how well x86 code is running, and Microsoft has an implementation for that, and Windows on ARM has come a long way. This would not have been possible on, an older ARM-based Windows. And so yeah, it's very compatible. DirectX 11, I believe, Parallels, and yeah, basically all sorts of weird software runs, even emulators within an emulator. And of course, on the Mac side of things, you have Rosetta, which also is capable of executing x86 code, also to a very high level of compatibility, but also speed. I mean, speed-wise, it's actually And of course, you can't expect to be able to run the latest generation of Windows gaming titles, but this actually runs very well. Alt F4 to exit this. Sega Rally is another one, another older game that actually runs pretty well. So, Xbox 360 controller, 720, 60 Hz, anti-aliasing off. And let's see how it runs. And I don't think that running OBS and capturing the footage actually has any impact on the Windows emulation side of things. But it might be the other way around. I mean, OBS may actually have to run on the 4 or on one of the 4 efficiency cores or low power cores. But it seems capable enough, and I'm actually capturing at 720p, 60 frames per second. And then maybe some micro stutters, and possibly rendering the car actually slows things down a bit. But this is actually very playable and responsive. I don't think there's much lag. Now the thing is that actually in version 17 of Parallels, using a Bluetooth controller was possible, but somehow it was lost in one of the updates. The ability was lost, and only now with version 18 they've reintroduced it. And you can also run, and I believe this is the x86 version. Compatibility, security, and I'm not sure how you would be able to tell, but oh yeah, this is the Intel version. So let's select Tekken Tag Tournament, boot into ISO. Now, of course, it picks up the controller, but it's not running full speed because, well, you know, it's an emulation running within an emulation. But it's actually still quite amazing to see how fast this actually is. Yeah, this is not going to be playable, but I just wanted to see whether or not running an emulator within an emulator is actually possible. This actually also is Windows 64, and this actually runs pretty well. This is capable of, let's do Sega Rally. This is actually running at 4 times the resolution or something like that. And yeah, it's ARM code running on an emulated Intel emulating ARM code. So yeah, it's a bit of a convoluted emulation thing. Let me see, load profile. To be able to play this with a PlayStation 4 controller and have the circle actually be a circle is actually quite interesting. Let's do a quick race. Safari 1, Premiere. So there may be some, you know, like horizontal lines or vertical lines.
3, 2, 1, go!
And there may be some flickering from certain textures popping in.
Easy right, easy
But
left.
this is running full speed and very responsive. often the PPSSPP emulator would complain of running too slow, and or stating that the sound may be choppy and stuff, and to change the settings. But this actually runs maxed out.
90 left.
And I must say, I'm very amazed by how well this looks and plays.
Narrow.
So, Alt F4 to exit. Yeah, it's really weird. Let me see. Control Delete, Task Manager, Performance, Apple Silicon. I enabled 4 cores and the Parallels adapter, 2 GB of RAM. Duckstation also seems to work. I've used the ARM release because there's a native ARM Windows, and I'm not sure if let me see, Retracer Type 4. And let's switch on analog mode. Duckstation really is a pretty solid emulator, and I don't think a native Mac port exists yet. But being able to run this within Windows 11 on ARM, you don't have to do the emulation thing, because it really is virtualization, the ARM bit. So if you run ARM native apps, of course it's going to be a lot better than doing the Intel apps. But things like Dolphin, the Dolphin Intel version actually runs quite well. There's also an ARM-based version now. This may not run full speed though. I'm not sure. Let's see. But being able to, I see the Windows M1 MacMini as a very power efficient system, which makes it possible for me to actually have this up and running and playing games when ambient temperatures are very high, heat wave circumstances. So using a ton of mini PCs. So this also is running in a higher resolution than the regular one. I think this is running at twice the resolution. I believe this is pretty much the ideal situation. And I also think I have the geometry correction going on. So and the reason why I thought this wasn't running full speed is the fact that this actually is the PAL version of the game, which runs at 50 Hertz. But yeah, just syncing my Bluetooth PlayStation 4 controller and being able to play a very nice PlayStation 1 title, and with the resolution turned up once, so it is twice the original resolution. I think this looks great. It's still pixelated enough for all the textures and all the 2D sprites, bitmap based stuff to not look so out of place with the polygons, whereas it's still smooth enough for it to actually benefit from looking very smart. Of course you could go HD, but for some reason with PlayStation you really get a discrepancy between the on-screen 2D elements and the polygons. Now you could do away with the geometry correction because, well, not all games like it. But it's going to be a lot more jumpy. And actually, I think the PlayStation gets away with the standard, geometry errors better when you run it at original resolution. There's also force feedback in this port. Amazing stuff. So the Duckstation, the ARM native port, actually runs very well. Expendable, which is a Windows game, and it's like a let me see if there's a 720. Oh, it's like weird resolutions. 920, 1080, 32-bit color, harbor texture compression, and then play. Let's see if that actually works, because this is 1080p, capturing it at 720p. Now, this is not the best version of Expendable. Actually, the best version of Expendable is the one that's running on Android. That's a true twin stick shooter, and the rest, all of them have some sort of tank controls. But again, this is a good old games port, and it just supports the PlayStation 4 controller as an Xbox controller. So I think when you go, if you want some native PC gaming and you are running an M1 Mac and you want to run some older software that is compatible with Windows 11, well, you actually see that this actually is quite a decent option. And I'm not sure which. Oh yeah, the button layout for in Windows is just insane. Strafe and fire is all on the action buttons, and well, it's not. So perhaps it's not that weird after all. But yeah, twin stick shooter, I mean, gosh, there were older arcade games that already supported twin stick shooters. And controllers on Windows, I think the Xbox 360 controller already was a thing. But yeah, this works. So let's go back to the Mac side of things. I'm just hoping OBS is actually able to keep up with all these. Oh yeah, and I've set it so that it actually reclaims the resolution. Well, it does seem to still record, so that's actually good. What else? Yeah, we got RetroArch. Let me see if it doesn't always want to recognize the controller after I've nope. It doesn't always want to recognize the controller properly after having run Parallels, but if I quit that, exit it completely, it may actually release. No, it's that's a bit of a bug. And so I may have to reboot and get back to you. Okay, so here we are with the second one. Yep, the Bluetooth controller is connected. So let's go RetroArch. Now it should actually, yeah. So for some reason, Parallels really doesn't, yeah, it overtakes the whole USB or Bluetooth beam writer. Let's see if I can run that. So yeah, and on the Intel Mac 2014, actually running RetroArch, which may actually be more compatible because it also does OpenGL, really is quite laggy. There's an amount of processing time that makes it laggy, and on the M1 Mac running something like this basically is very low latency, so it's very playable. And it works just like on Windows. Let's see, arcade game. What's a nice arcade game? Gee, what's a nice arcade game? Darius. Just single screen Darius. So FB Neo works. Oh, this is actually already the multiple screen. This runs very well. Let's see, another ColecoVision Dreamcast. Why not? Buggy Heat. Okay, so not all cores are working because not all cores have interface with the metal backend, because the RetroArch that I'm using actually uses metal as a backend, so not everything runs properly, because it can't interface with the video backend. But yeah, Famicom Disk System, Pac-Man. Game Boy Advance, let me see, Hot Potato or something, that's actually one of my favorites. Hot Potato. I have the original card, it's just such a nice puzzler. The music is very irritating, very annoying. But basically it's like these same game-like things. Mission game, new mission, munch your best. Basically, you have this cart, and you can control. You can move the colors around, and basically you have to get rid of the opponents that are free on the street. And you have to reach the end of the level. Basically, it works like that. GameCube may not work, yeah, because, well, it also doesn't use the metal. Jaguar does work, I believe. Let's see. And this also is an ARM native Tempest 2000 really is the must-have game. Of course, I mean, I do have a Jaguar, but Tempest is one of the must-have titles on the system, but Jaguar emulation is far from perfect, as you'll see. It's a very complex system, so but when you are within the game, it actually runs pretty decent. Runs full speed. Oh, should have taken that. But yeah, that actually runs pretty well. Let's see, MSX2 works. Nintendo 64. No, it also doesn't work. Nintendo DS. That does work. Odyssey 2. Also works. So yeah, that's the downside of RetroArch, that not all cores are supported yet, because not all cores interface with the metal interface. Now, I thought that RetroArch worked in such a way that actually the graphics that the cores use were actually, you know, somehow passed on to the core, or to the main RetroArch core, so that actually, regardless of the graphics backend that the core uses, you know, it is just the front end that just makes sure that it works. So yeah, I mean, PlayStation works. There's no PlayStation 2 core, but there is a Saturn core. Now, with the previous version, this didn't want to work, but there is a Saturn core that has been updated to work with metal, and it actually runs pretty much full speed. And this game, this arcade shooter, is actually very nice. I love the arcade game, and I think the Saturn really does a good job of recreating the experience. Game starts. Now, if you hear some slight fan noise in the background, that's because it's a heat wave and I'm running fans to keep somewhat cool. Yeah, but being able to create videos on the MacMini, doing retro gaming, capturing on the same machine, actually barely using any power, is actually very interesting. And this just runs great. Now, perhaps the capture, which is at 60 frames per second, might not be optimal. This is also just a test version to see whether or not I'll be able to get away with having some viewable gameplay footage. Whoops! But this was actually very playable. No lag issues that I know of. So yeah, so this actually works quite well, and if you really want to have a very compatible gaming RetroArch based type of system, then you actually use this one, OpenEmu, which is based on the RetroLib, but has a very nice front end with And here you actually have resume. You have Nintendo 64. This is running in Intel mode, and
confirm mission objective.
this is not a an ARM native port, but it runs great. PlayStation, WonderSwan. So actually, a lot of systems that don't run on the RetroArch Intel-based version or native version, Metal, they do run here, and there's no Dreamcast here, but that's been catered for by other emulators. So we do have Redream, which is an Intel-based emulator. Let's see, what is a very nice game that shows off Metropolis Street Racer. Yeah, street racing is illegal, can be dangerous, continue. And it's Greenwich Mean Time +1. Now, of course, running it through Windows or through this. I'm not sure which version of Intel emulation actually is more solid. Is it the Microsoft version, or is it the Apple version? Drive car, street racing. Welcome to Metropolis Street Racing, Chapter 1. Of course, Project Gotham Racing on the Xbox is really what it was about on the later consoles. This is more laggy than this is really noticeably laggy.
Should be a real treat, so keep on listening.
And with racing games you do get away with it somewhat, but I wouldn't you know, get an M1 Mac for Dreamcast emulation with Redream, because that's a bit laggy. What else? Oh, Xemu. I'm not sure if that actually will work. Load disk. Oh, here it does recognize a PS4 controller natively. Let's see. Halo? Yeah, Halo. And then do the video debug and show you there have been some serious speed improvements, and I also think this is Intel emulation. So this actually is an ARM CPU running an Intel, or running an emulator, emulating an Intel emulator. Not sure if you still are capable of, you know, somehow capturing what this is all about, but yeah. And of course, this is just not.
Chief, can you hear me?
Yeah, if this is really playable, I'm not sure.
Are
But
you all right? Can you move? Yeah,
I guess, you know, if it sticks to 30 and it would remain at 30, it would be playable. But mind you, a lot of these older games, more modern consoles, quite often they would run games at 30 frames per second instead of 60 instead of full speed. But yeah, this really is lagging. So this, I would not consider this playable, but then again, it's not a native running emulator. I'm surprised it actually works. What else? Yeah, we got, of course, we got the new. Whoops. Go to applications, emulators. I guess I still have to. Oh wait, this one. Open. I think the other one still needs to. Burnout. This emulator is native to Mac, but it's an Intel version. It's not an ARM version. So you will not get full speed on most games. At least, well, you will get full speed on easy to run games, and actually this is a PAL version, but you won't be able to hit full speed with more demanding games. And I guess, yeah, I mean, you've seen Outrun way too many times, but I guess I might show it. I might show you with Outrun 2. This actually is a very easy to run game. You actually have potatoes that are still running it, but yeah, as you can see, instead of hitting 50, a solid 50, you still go down like 3 frames out of the 50. So it's, yeah, it's not laggy. I mean, the Redream emulator was quite laggy. This actually is very responsive, but this runs the metal. Let me see if I can punch up Outrun coast to coast. And for the longest time, there would not be a properly supported PlayStation emulator on the Mac. Only recently official support has been reintroduced. There were some folk creating their own ports. The thing is, of course, that with Apple being very stubborn about only supporting metal for the most part, of course, OpenGL, Vulkan and stuff, it really makes porting games to the Mac or emulators to the Mac quite difficult. So yeah, this is not running full speed. This would have to run at 60 frames solid, but it is not. In such a way that it isn't even capable of playing the music full speed, so it really slows down the music. It stretches and yeah. And the control is quite a bit laggy, so you tend to oscillate and overcompensate, so you actually end up going zigzagging across the track. It looks great. There's this minute dithering going on, but yeah. And then we have something quite special. On Android, there's this EtherSX2, which is a PlayStation emulator that runs natively on ARM, and they also created a Mac port, which probably was quite easy to do. Let's run the same game, and basically it has the same interface almost, because it's also based on PSX2, but it has an ARM. And let's just do the same settings, and you'll see that, well, doing the menu, I thought, oh gosh, it's going down to the low 50s and stuff, you know. Be very afraid, but... And of course, I haven't tried it with running OBS in the background. Oh yeah, and the older versions of PSX2 would have this error, actually, where you can't see the car selection because there's this old bit of the screen is actually overlaid. The track you select doesn't affect the gameplay. When I was playing this without capturing this with OBS, it had a solid 60 frames per second through all of the bits that it would struggle with the translated. And as you can see, with the emulator running natively on ARM, and at the same time capturing with OBS in the background, it just runs full speed. Not a single drop frame in an area where most platforms running this emulator would actually drop a frame. Even high-end systems on Windows would jump around and not have this very solid 60 frames locked performance. So this actually is, to me, the best solid performance I've seen running this game on a PlayStation 2 emulator. And this bit, it has transparencies because there's a bit of mist, ocean mist. It took this emulator the longest time to actually get that implemented properly. And this runs beautifully at native resolution. Oh, there was a slight slowdown. Not sure if that was audible. It was audible in the music. Not sure if it was audible in the frame rate. Actually, I'm quite curious what would happen if I up the graphics, the graphics resolution twice, but then it just exits the emulator. So yeah, it exits. It's segment fault. Ooh, not a good thing. Yeah, this also is very nice. The 3D Marine Aquarium. Excellent. Excellent stuff. So yeah, this really is a very nifty, of course, Vice. Vice runs full speed. And what else have I got running? Oh yeah, VirtualC64, which is actually a very interesting high-end Dirk Hoffman. I think actually I met the guy when I was visiting and traveling around with a bunch of Dutch colleagues, and Dirk and we talked about his emulator for a bit, but that was like 98 or something like that. 98? Yeah, 98 or something like that. So yeah. He also does I think he did a VIC-20, but for sure he also has a Amiga. And of course it doesn't do an Amiga 1200, it does a very solid cycle exact Amiga 500 or 600. And very cool for running your ADF games. Let me see, Ethos X. Oh yeah, and there's another virtualization thing where you can actually run macOS 9.2.1. Basically, UTM, I think it's Qemu, which actually is very similar to Xemu, the Xbox emulator. Now, of course, the only way to actually to be able to run, I have to capture the mouse. The only way to actually be able to run classic macOS would actually be on OS X, would be to have OS X 10.4 and the classic environment enabled. So yeah, this is actually the closest you would come to being able to run. Let me see. Oh, there's this system profiler. I think it does a PowerPC. Yeah. So a PowerPC emulator on Intel. This is an Intel app. So this is not. Whoops. The shutdown is different. Let me see. Quit. And then the shutdown is like here. They moved it around a bit, but yeah, very interesting. Also, an open source Windows re-implementation. It's more than Wine. This actually is running within a virtual machine. So. It basically is a complete re-implementation of, I believe it's Windows NT4. So it's not Windows XP, but Windows NT4, which basically is Windows XP, but Windows XP has more consumer-friendly things. Reactos, it's been in development for the longest time, and now it wants to install a driver for a network card, and it doesn't want to do it, but yeah, this only, for me, this only runs on virtual hardware. People have claimed to be able to have it run on real hardware, but yeah, it's a very cool thing, Reactos. I mean, I love that people are working on preserving Windows functionality without the need for Windows. So iDOS, yeah, this is cool. The iMac or the MacMini M1 actually is capable of running iOS applications, and this actually is an iOS application which I managed to download on the M1 Mini, but also my iPad and my iPhone, because it was discontinued, of course. Yeah, and that octopus thingy, that sound control thingy, actually allows me to control the volume, the output of the volume over HDMI, because for some reason Apple just doesn't want to use the consumer version of HDMI out, even on consumer products like the MacMini I. So no volume control on the Mac Mini when it comes to audio through HDMI. I did have some native games because I had iOS on it, some iOS games, and I had Apple Arcade on it for a while, but I stopped using that. So yeah, and DaVinci Resolve, which is not ARM, it's Intel iMovie Art Studio. Art Studio, this is an iOS application, and GIMP. This is an iOS application. So basically this is actually the screen of the iPhone, and yeah, it's a very nifty, nice little app. Speed test is also an iOS application. Asus router is also an iOS application. Utilities. I think system info is also an iOS application. Yeah. This actually, I ran that on my iPad, but let me see. Is there any other iOS application here? Don't think so. No. And video and media. So yeah, but I'm actually quite stoked with the Mac Mini. It's very silent, very quiet, and I've just hooked up a Samsung terabyte drive. And yeah, the cool thing about DOSBox, and that also is an Intel app, not a native, is that it allows you to create icons that are basically Macintosh applications that contain the emulator itself within. You just run it and you basically have these old DOS applications, even on the M1 Mac. You can slow them down. Aladdin. Some of them you still have to configure. It does a pretty decent job of auto-detecting the speed at which these things are supposed to run. I think this needs the sound card to be configured. BC Quest for Tired. So yeah, I mean, there's an awful bit of CGA MS-DOS like graphics. Commander Keen. Oh man, I played this so many times. VJ card detected. I do believe this will do the PC speaker. Yeah. Very, very high-end PC speaker, but yeah, I've converted a fair few. Oh, I even did Phil's Dash bench, so 3D bench, and I do believe I've set this to the max. Or I may not have. Let me see. Oops. There is a way to set the speed on things like this. Touchpad. Oh, emulation. And there's a translation thing. Normally reclost. Let me see. Speed emulation. Restart, speed up CPU, show CPU settings, and just go to the max and see, and have, yeah, one. Oh, and it's still doing that. Oh gosh, and now it won't show me my, yeah, let's do it single speed like that. So, oh, command click to release mount poison. So I have this at full speed now. It's an Intel based emulator. And I'm doing a benchmark. So it shows you the fastest possible DOSBox experience on the M1 Mac running Boxer. Of course, there's DOSBox ports out there for Mac that may be faster, but this is the latest Boxer I could find that was 64-bit. So 19.6. And then the it will crap up though. It most definitely will crap up. I mean, it won't be able to run all of them. So it has a set number of frames that it just draws, and the amount of time that it takes to draw everything, that's the number you get on the screen. And this is running a bit faster, I believe. No, I don't think it ran any faster. 3D benchmark. This may actually crap up, I'm not sure. Not sure about the Visa implementation within DOSBox or something. Yeah, and remember, this actually runs at the full speed of the set CPU, because command and click, emulation, CPU settings, it's max. Optimized emulation. So yeah, basically what is emulated of the CPU, you can actually set a more elaborate CPU emulation with more higher end CPU features being emulated. But yeah, I mean, this really needs a native M1 port, of course, because yeah, this is just nested emulation, and I mean it's amazing how fast it actually runs. But 14.3 frames per second, so that is actually the, and I do believe if we go to the higher end SVGA benchmark, this would actually have, or it may not. Possibly the bottleneck here is the emulated x86 code running, and not necessarily the amount of pixels that needs to be drawn on the screen, because I do think the frames per second will actually be identical in the higher end graphics set with the higher end graphics settings. So this may actually end up being the exact same number of frames, or it may not be. It's not that far apart, I think. Will Doom run the Doom benchmark? Minimal details. Of course, Doom has a frame cap, so it just runs through this and it'll show you how fast it was. So it was 2,134 game ticks in 613 real ticks. I never understood what that actually meant. Let's do the max details. So I do think if you look at the performance of this, you actually can expect some pretty decent MS-DOS gaming performance if you run MS-DOS based games. You know, benchmarks only say so much, I guess. And of course, I mean, this not being this may actually be the same. No, it's slower because the number of real ticks is slower. Or higher, I'm not sure. Oh gosh, I'm not sure what I'm looking at. Quake time demo. So this is the resolution that most of us with our low-end machines would be capable of running Quake at. I do believe that this, for many people, was a reason to actually go get a Pentium machine, or swap out the motherboard, the RAM, and the CPU, because Pentiums would be much more capable at running Doom than 486s. Perhaps even 486s might not be able to. Yeah, it needs a coprocessor, right? Doom needs a coprocessor, so might actually run on a 486 DX2. I forgot, but not in a playable frame rate. So get that golden bit, golden key. I believe that's the end of the demo. So it ran at 18.1 frames per second. Oh, let's quit. Yeah. So with the increased resolution of 360 by 480, what will it run at? On most of my systems, this really would take a huge hit in performance, as it does over here on the virtual machine. It's substantially slower. There's people that are very good at looking at the screen and saying, well, that's like 11 frames per second or something like that. It's very inconsistent. This bit looking up was actually a high frame rate, but this actually crawls to a halt. And I do believe they go average, so maybe 11 or something. I'm not sure. My guesstimate would be 11. But that may be overestimating it. Might be closer to 9. Yeah, this is really slow. Oh, grab that gold key. Shit the bastard. Grab the gold key. The other one. Jump down, grab the gold. Oh, go through the. Yeah, and grab the gold key. And throw some grenades or. Yeah, how many frames per second was that? 11 frames. Oh, I wasn't that far off. 11 frames per second. Yeah, I guess when you've been playing computer games for a long time, you are actually correct at. You may actually be correct at guessing it. Quick time demo 640. No, that's going to be too much of a slideshow. Let's go for system information. So it does do a 486 with a coprocessor at 600 megahertz, which is actually quite substantial. Memory, whoops, memory, and exit. Landmark speed test. It may. Ooh, that's actually quite fast. So it's like a 400 megahertz AT with a 200 something 287 coprocessor. So it's not too bad, you know. It's quite fast. Top bench. Top bench score is around 700 something. Speedsys. This may actually not work. No, this probably will hang. Yeah, because it does very intrinsic cache calculations and stuff. So yeah, I mean, it may actually work if you enhance the emulated CPU, but yeah. So M1 gaming for you, and yeah, this is just a test recording. I do seem to be capable of running this with OBS, and let's see how it turns out.